This video is for BTEC Sport and Exercise Science, Unit 6, Coaching for Performance and Fitness, and focuses in on A1 skills and knowledge for performance and fitness, specifically how to plan for safety and changing conditions. So, specification, again, I've divided it into the skills, the knowledge and planning, and then planning for safety and changing conditions. So we're looking at the green content on the spec for A1. Again, the assessment criteria requires you to to describe, explain and analyse content to gain your grades. And that's shown here, so hopefully you're familiar with this by now. What's meant by each aspect, give sporting examples and different sports. Why is it important and effective to do this, and what might be the negative impact or consequences of not doing it or doing it wrong as a coach. So, safety knowledge. Without doubt, there are lots of reasons and obvious reasons, hopefully, why coaches should have really good knowledge of aspects of safety within whatever sport they're coaching. Now, that might be things like making sure your athletes are prepared before and after a training session, so completing the warm-up, cool-down, so focusing on this sort of right-hand side of the slide here. You might lead it, you might ask them to do it over time, but you need to ultimately be responsible for preparing and your athlete's recovery. Rules are there for for a reason in sports. So whatever rules are there, particularly in things like contact sports, if you think about football, rugby, where damage can be done without doubt, if rules aren't abided by, then you need to ensure not only that your players understand the rules, but that you control them and they abide by them, because there are potentially negative consequences of doing that. Several sports use equipment, so think of some examples of sports where equipment needs to be used safely. I mean, gymnastics is a very easy one there. And obviously the consequences of not using it safely are quite severe. And part of your role as a coach might be to check that the equipment is in good working order, or that it's an appropriate bit of equipment for the standard or the ability of the performers or the age of the performers taking part. And that leads me into ability. Certain skills, certain contact, certain rules may not be appropriate to inexperienced, low standard, young age players. If you're creating competitive situations, you might need to make sure that skill levels are matched, or even things like size, fit somebody's mass and weight is appropriately equal. Again, contact sports like this here, you might not have a huge person competing against a much smaller person. That wouldn't be appropriate. Again, many sports require athletes to wear protective equipment and kit, so you need to insist that they wear it. A lot of the time, codes of conduct within sport require you as a coach to be responsible to make sure they wear things like that, whether it's gum shield or shin pads or protective headwear. That's part of your role in planning to maintain safe conditions for your participants. And again, the place that you perform. So if it's outdoors or indoors for that matter, the surface needs to be clear, clean, safe. If there's ice, if there's debris, your typical playing on a school pitch where public have gone on and left litter, possibly sharp objects, possibly dog poop, then that's not okay. And there's, again, serious consequences of you as a coach not checking that and being effective, but also for your players, of course. So not only should you, as an effective coach, plan the content of your sessions, but you have to plan for safety. You could have the best made plans of a session, and then some condition changes. The weather could turn, somebody could become injured, something could be problematic in terms of the equipment or the facilities, and you've got to know how to deal with that situation so that you don't make things worse. You protect your participants and yourself, and it could be you just make an adjustment, but it could be you might need to have a complete contingency plan and change what you do. If there's a leak in the roof of the leisure centre, you don't just carry on playing if there's water on the floor or there's dripping water on the floor. you use a different space, or you modify the activities that you do. So essentially, you've got to be a bit of a cynic, really. You've got to prepare for every eventuality and have in mind, what would I do if somebody gets injured? What's my plan of action? What do I do? If a facility or a bit of equipment is damaged, what do I do? If I can't use all that space, what's my plan? So almost in the planning phase, you need to think, right, what could go wrong? And how can I best prevent something going wrong and try and put things in place? But if it does go wrong, what is my plan as a contingency? What do I do next in place? Of course, as I've sort of already alluded to, really, conditions may change out of your control. Weather's an easy example of that. You may go out for a session, the sun is out, it's great, and then this horrendous storm or clouds change, or you check the pitch the night before and the next morning it's frozen. So whatever the situation is, whatever the conditions are, safety must be your priority, is your responsibility. You have a duty of care for those that you are coaching. It could be that you can get away with changing the activities. If the ground is quite slippery, then maybe you don't do some speed activities or have loads of changes of direction. Maybe you do stuff that's a bit more static or is at a slower pace. If necessary, of course, you stop the session. Nobody should be put at risk just to carry on a training session. But as I said, maybe you can adjust the drills that you do, or the pace that you work at, or the space. Maybe you can go inside if it was really bad outside, if you're lucky. Ultimately, safety is number one. If conditions changed, you need to think up some different sporting examples of how you might maintain safety when something has occurred. So again, you will need to show your ability to think and to analyse the importance and the impact of coaches being effective and planning for changing conditions. Obviously, add some more, but it could be things like, if you've thought it all through and you know what you're going to do if it does rain, or if you can't use all the equipment, you will go into your sessions confident and you'll respond confidently, and the session can still be effective if you can make changes. And of course, safety is maintained. That is number one, that is paramount. If you don't do that, if you don't plan ahead, if you don't think like a cynic, what if, and you don't make adjustments if conditions change, you're essentially putting your performers at risk, and maybe yourself. And if somebody is harmed, it could be that you're considered negligent and legal action may be taken, which has all sorts of bad consequences for you. Not to mention they may become harmed. So again, add your own examples to that. So there we have, that's the green, planning for changing conditions and maintaining safety in changing conditions section.